Hi there, and welcome back to the BroBryceHealth channel. My name is Bryce L. Tomlinson, BroBryce, and today is Saturday, so it's 4 p.m. here Pacific time. Well, it's actually 4:08 Pacific time. I'm giving plenty of time for people to start joining the chat. I've tweeted it out, put it out on Facebook, and hopefully some people will show up and join us in the chat. Today, we're going to focus on the focus of conversation. Of course, we're going to include all forms of check-in and weigh-in for those of you who want to share your progress, have accountability partners, and whatnot. This is polyunsaturated. So the focus of the conversation is going to be saturated fats versus polyunsaturated versus monounsaturated fats. And the reason for that is because so many people think that saturated fat is just bad for you. And we're proving every day, those of us who eat lots of it every day, we're proving that that's just not the case. Our labs tell the truth. Our numbers tell the truth. Numbers don't lie. And so you learn from your own n equals 1. And n equals 1 means this is an experiment. N equals the number of people participating in the experiment. N, in your case, it's you, so n equals 1. So, you have a lot of people that will ask you what is a good fat versus a bad fat. And so a lot of people think, oh, they immediately think, oh, avocados, you know, and avocados are a great fat. They're fantastic. I have nothing bad to say about avocados, but I also don't have anything bad to say about bacon or butter or heavy cream or a big fat ribeye steak with the fat still on it, because the fat is so good. You know, I don't have anything bad to say about those things either. So it's important to know that good fats are not just the ones that instantly pop to your mind, like olive oil. Olive oil is great. I don't have anything bad to say about olive oil, but you know, I also don't have anything bad to say about pork belly. That's important to know when you come into the realm of ketogenic nutrition, because you're gonna have some fat phobia when you first start out. You're gonna have everything that you've been told, and you're gonna have all your friends. Even if you don't have that fear of fat, you're gonna have all your friends telling you, well, your coronary artery is gonna, you know, want an apology later. I actually had someone tell me that recently. I was getting an ultrasound done on my heart to help try and, you know, get to the bottom of this AFib thing that's going on with me. AFib, by the way, has nothing to do with cholesterol intake. It's not caused by cholesterol intake, and is nothing that you could have done badly to make AFib happen. And there's nothing that you can do good necessarily to make AFib go away. At least they haven't figured out anything short of surgery. So with that being said, I have a giveaway, a book giveaway that I'll be doing later on, and I'm not going to specify when, but you guys who have watched this program before may have an idea when I'm going to do this. But I'm going to give away one of 4 books, and these 4 books are the winner will choose one of these 4 books. So I have Why We Get Fat and What to Do About It by Gary Taubes. It's an amazing book. I have The New Atkins for a New You by Dr. Eric Westman, Stephen Finney, and Jeff Volek. And I have the very popular Wheat Belly book by William Davis, also of Undoctored fame. And yeah, I guess I only have 3 books, because the 4th book is also why we get fat and what to do about it. So you can choose between, you get to choose between the little yellow one or the bigger red one. Now all of these are thrift store finds. You may find signs of notes or use in them, and you're welcome to take your own notes in them if you want to. But anyway, you get to choose between any of those books today, and I have other copies of them of my own, and I will share these with you later on this evening. So I'm going to do my own check-in, and those of you who would like to check in as well, I'm going to do my own check-in. So my own check-in is my first week on the bacon experiment. This is now, I'm just today starting week 3 of the bacon experiment. So I'm almost halfway through. Well, actually, it's 15 days. So yeah, I'm halfway through. So some of these measurements are strange. I would recommend that if you're going to do this kind of thing, that you make sure that you write stuff down, because originally I thought that I'd lost 2 inches off my waist, and maybe I hadn't. But so now I'm actually writing it down. I wrote down when I first started this thing. So there's different measurements. So my neck, which I haven't lost any measurements off my neck in a long time, but my neck started out at 17.5 inches. It is now 16.5 inches. My chest before was 41 inches. Now this is just straight across the chest, across the pectoral. That is at the widest point of my chest, 41 inches. Now it's 40.5 inches. And that's just relaxed. My arms, which is the circumference here, it went from 12.5 to 12 inches. I still have a little tiny bit of fat hanging down off the bottom of my arms. My waist before was 37 inches. It is now still 37 inches. My belly, are, you know, they wrote down the hips, but my hips are kind of hard to find. So my belly, which is the widest part of me, I think, or, well, the widest part of me down there anyway, is 40 inches, or it was 40 inches. Now it's 39.5. And my thighs were 20 inches before, and now they're 19.5. So I'm losing a little bit. My calves before were 15.75. Now they're 15.5. Very minute. My calves are like rocks because of the work that I do. My head, I wish I had taken a measurement of my head when I first started, because I looked at pictures of my head, and my head is, you know, I have a abnormally large head anyway, but it is still 23.75 inches around my head. So there's that. I lost 8 pounds in the first 8 days of doing this, and I have not lost any more. So I went from 189 pounds down to 181 pounds. So that's something that I've documented. I weigh myself daily or semi-daily, and so I've lost 8 pounds. I haven't lost any more, but I have lost some inches here and there. And so sometimes the scale will lie to you, and an inch of fat off of you can be very, very encouraging when you don't see any difference on the scale. Now, in the meantime, other people have said that they notice the difference and they see the way my clothes fit. My clothes do definitely fit differently, drastically differently, dramatically differently. And so that's cool. First, I thought that it was helping me with my carpal tunnel syndrome. My hands hurt a lot with the work that I do. But it seems that, you know, when I do particular jobs, it really does still flare up quite a bit. So yesterday and the day before, my hands really hurt a lot. And it was aching a lot. I was having some problems with my back, and last night, for the first time in like forever, I took some pain medication, and that seemed to help me sleep a little bit. And my back is more relaxed today. It didn't give me nearly the trouble that I had before today. But I also, the job that I got today was doing something that was more menial task, and less, for the second half of my day, it was mostly just making signs for merchandise. So it was kind of a menial task as opposed to what I'm normally doing, which is stocking shelves and stocking pallets. Anyway, that being said, I want to look up some information on fats. And I'm going to read something here. This off of Ruled Me, and Craig on Ruled Me. He's a brilliant writer, and he's also a brilliant photographer and a brilliant cook. So I would recommend that you check out Ruled.me, and I'm going to put a link down below in the description. And I'm going to make commentation in between these things, so you know what my thoughts are. This is what he says: the importance of fat, a rundown on different types of fat and why you should know the difference. And the different types of fat are really important. I am here to tell you, a lot of the fats that we've been sold on are just honestly nothing short of a scam. So he says there are three main types of fat we see in everyday life. There's been quite a lot of misconceptions and misinformation that has built up over the years about fat. All of these three fats are important to our health and should always be incorporated into your diet. The way that we identify what types of fat we are eating is the amount that is dominant in the mixture. For example, we call olive oil 75%, plus or minus, monounsaturated, a monounsaturated fat, and we call butter, which is plus or minus 60% saturated fat, a saturated fat. All real foods will contain a mixture of saturated, polyunsaturated, and monounsaturated fat. So his definition here of a saturated fat is these fats are necessary and keep your immune system healthy, your bone density normal, and your testosterone levels in check. For years, they were dumped into the danger category along with trans fats, but studies have proven them to be necessary time and time again. That's absolutely true. I find for myself that saturated fats have a very, I was corrected on this. I'm not sure what the terminology would be. And since I'm not a doctor, I can't really give you medical advice, but I was told that a ketogenic diet does not have an anti-inflammatory effect, but what it does not have is an inflammatory effect, whereas our standard American diet does have an inflammatory effect, and we are getting rid of that inflammatory effect and letting the body do its own work to reduce the inflammation. So for years, they're dumped in the danger category, but studies have proven them to be necessary time and time again. They have also been found they have no association with risk of heart disease. Okay, I don't know that they don't have an association. They do have correlation. Association does not equal causation. So that's my clarifying that. People say that a lot of people who have heart disease have a high amount of saturated fat and cholesterol built up in their arteries. Okay, but why does that happen? It's not because they ate it that it happened. It's because of something else that caused the saturated fat and cholesterol to harden into their arteries. That's what did it. And that thing is called inflammation. Whatever it is that they did that caused the inflammation, that's what put the saturated fat and cholesterol into their arteries. It's not the eating of the saturated fat and cholesterol, because I got news for you. Your body makes enough saturated fat and cholesterol all on its own without you eating any. Okay, you have saturated fat and cholesterol in your body. if you just ate vegetables all the time, you'd still have saturated fat and cholesterol in your body, because that's what your body uses for storage and repair and for your general health. Your body uses that and it makes it itself. So you don't need the help of dietary fat and cholesterol to make that happen. Vegetarians still die of heart attacks. And, you know, so it's because saturated fat and cholesterol that's in your arteries generally comes from you. You know, if you want to think about it in this terms, okay, you have a cow. What does a cow naturally eat? A cow eats grass. So how does a cow end up with saturated fat? How does beef have saturated fat in it? How does it have cholesterol in it? How does it have so much cholesterol in it? Where did it get it? From the grass? No, it didn't get it from the grass. It got it from the cow that made it. So think about it in those terms. And all the fat that you store in your body is generally going to be saturated animal fat, because that's you. You're an animal and you have saturated fat. So foods that have them, back to Craig here, foods that have them include meat, eggs, and butter, food that we have been eating for thousands of years. These fats will improve HDL and LDL cholesterol levels. So let's get some clarity on the definition of saturated fats. So this is a type of fat containing a high proportion of fatty acid molecules without double bonds, considered to be less healthy in the diet than unsaturated fat. Here we go. According to dictionary.com, a type of single bond animal or vegetable fat that is found as that found in butter, meat, egg yolks, and coconut or palm oil, that in humans tend to increase cholesterol levels in the blood. Lie. Wrong. Okay. That's not exactly what happens. It tends to increase cholesterol levels in the blood if you're doing something that causes inflammation in the blood. If you have inflammation, your arteries are going to be on fire and they need repairing. So saturated fat and cholesterol comes to try to fix things. Anyway, now let's look up a definition of a polyunsaturated fat here. So we have polyunsaturated fats. According to Craig here, these are usually seen in the form of vegetable oils and have been hailed as wonderful, but in fact are normally highly processed. All of those heart-healthy margarine spreads we see, avoid them. Now, basically, polyunsaturated fats, a great example would be, you know, your light margarine, your Country Crock, your Golden Soft. A lot of them are hydrogenated, and so they don't break down in the body. Hydrogenated means they've been bombarded at high temperatures with high hydrogen atoms, and basically making them have an almost infinite shelf life. As such, since it doesn't break down easily, it doesn't break down in the body easily, and it causes massive amounts of inflammation, all kinds of chemical problems, because you're basically eating something your body can't do anything with. Studies have shown that rising rates of heart disease are linked with liquid vegetable oils and trans fats, not saturated fats. Now this I do agree with. So trans fats meaning like the old Crisco. I was just talking with my mother-in-law today about how my mom used to cook with Crisco. I used to help her. We'd make cookies. We made all kinds of stuff. You know, you line the pan with Crisco. You cover the turkey with Crisco. You know, we did all that stuff. And Crisco basically it had an almost infinite shelf life. Now, for those of you in the food industry, and I mean the manufacture of food, you know that one of your biggest cuts, one of the biggest bites out of your bottom line is expiration dates, shelf life. If your shelf life is really short, then that means that you have to sell a gargantuan amount very quickly before it expires. You got to get it out of your warehouse. You got to get it off the shelf stores. You got to get it into the hands of consumers that will use it up quickly, so that those happy customers will be able to come back and get more and treat your product as a commodity, which is what you want it to be. You want it to be a commodity that they have to come back for over and over. Well, they're not going to come back if they don't get to use it all. So that's the thing with something like Crisco, or these trans fats, these hydrogenated vegetable oils, is that they have a long shelf life. So they were able to make a product through processing that would have a very long shelf life. You could depend on this product to still not be rancid when you pulled it off your shelf like a month or a year later. And so it was something that you would come back for again and again and again. And for decades, people just dug into things like Crisco because it was cheap. They could sell it for really cheap because they didn't have to worry about manufacturing too much. They could sell it, and they claimed that it was healthy as well. When you have organizations in the health community that are bargaining for your business, and they're trying to push to get you to use these different kinds of products, you have to question motivations. So again, let's get back to Craig here. Don't get this confused, as fatty fish is also high in polyunsaturated fat, and these are great for you. See, takeaway note is that processed polyunsaturated fats are bad. And I'm just going to go out on a limb and say almost all processed fats are bad. In fact, almost every processed food is bad. But processed fats are really, really gnarly. And the reason why they have to process them is because of that shelf life business. Okay, and will worsen your HDL, LDL, cortisol, cholesterol. He's got some typos in here. Cholesterol levels. And natural polyunsaturated fats are good. So that would be like fish. And you'd even find some polyunsaturated fat in meat. You'd find some polyunsaturated fat in you if you cut you open and checked you out. But for the most part, you're going to find that you're almost all saturated fat in there, your fat stores. And the natural polyunsaturated fats are good. They will improve HDL, LDL, cholesterol levels. Now, for instance, my total cholesterol level is high. It's high according to my doctor. But the total cholesterol number counts your HDL as well as your LDL. So if your HDL is going up and your LDL is not going down, your total cholesterol goes up, and your doctor says that's still bad. And even if your triglycerides are going down. Now, triglycerides are saturated fat running through the blood. Okay, what I found out was that the more saturated fat that I ate in my diet, the less saturated fat was running through my blood. So I found my triglycerides, which is that saturated fat in the blood, went down dramatically by like 250, 300 points in a matter of months when I started eating just tons and tons more fat instead of carbohydrate. So I cut carbohydrate almost completely out of my diet. At this point in time, because I'm doing the bacon experiment, there's no carbohydrate in my diet. Well, except for, whatever they cure the bacon with. But there's nothing else. So I had bacon again today instead of pork belly. But normally there'd be no carbohydrate other than what's in the meat itself. So, that brings up another point when you're thinking about carbohydrates in meat, right? Don't think that just because you're eating only meat that there's no carbohydrate. That animal had blood sugar. it ate something that gave it some blood sugar. That blood sugar is in the meat. So that cow ate some grass. It had carbohydrate. It ended up in the blood, and so you have blood sugar in the meat. But when you think about it in these terms, your whole body at any given moment has a maximum on the outside of like two teaspoons of sugar in it. So 2 teaspoons for a 180-pound person, right? Or a 200-pound person, or a 300-pound, animal. It's pretty thin, the sugar. So the amount of sugar that you're actually going to have in a serving of meat is going to be, even a huge serving of meat, it's going to be pretty slim. So let's look up the definition online of polyunsaturated fat. Okay, polyunsaturated fat. Okay. This, according to the ever reliable and venerable and not quite vettable Wikipedia. Polyunsaturated fats are lipids in which the constituent hydrocarbon chain possesses 2 or more carbon-carbon double bonds. Polyunsaturated fat can be found mostly in nuts, seeds, fish, seed oils, and oysters. Unsaturated refers to the fact that the molecules contain less than the maximum amount of hydrogen if there were no double bonds. This material exists as cis or trans isomers depending on the geometry of the double bond. And it says here, it goes on to say, saturated fats have hydrocarbon chains which can be mostly readily aligned. The hydrocarbon chains in trans fats align more readily than those in cis fats, but less well than those in saturated fats. In general, this means that the melting point of fats increase from cis to trans unsaturated, then to saturated. See the section about the chemical structure of fats for more information. And I will go there. So as you can see, we're drawing a stark contrast between saturated and polyunsaturated already. And most people would agree that monounsaturated fats are generally good, and you won't find many processed monounsaturated fats out there in the wild. So, from a chemical standpoint, monounsaturated fats are simply fat molecules that have one unsaturated carbon bond in the molecule. This is also called a double bond. So, one double bond. Oils that contain monounsaturated fats are typically liquid at room temperature, but start to turn solid when they're chilled. So, how do monounsaturated fats affect my health? Monounsaturated fats can help reduce. This is from healthyforgood.heart.org. How do monounsaturated fats affect my health? Monounsaturated fats can help reduce bad cholesterol levels in your blood, which can lower your risk of heart disease and stroke. They also provide nutrients to help develop and maintain your body's cells. Oils rich in monounsaturated fat also contribute to, excuse me, sorry about that. Been up since 2:30 this morning. Contribute vitamin E to the diet, an antioxidant most Americans need more of. So some examples would be olive oil, canola oil. Canola oil is also a vegetable oil. The unfortunate thing about canola oil is you can't get canola oil without processing it. So while canola oil is high in monounsaturated, it's also high in polyunsaturated, and it's highly inflammatory. Peanut oil. Peanut oil is a monounsaturated fat. However, most of the peanuts that we have that are farmed are not great for you, and there's a number of reasons. That's a whole nother video. We could maybe talk about that next week, but you guys let me know. Safflower oil and sesame oil, both of those, I would say sesame oil would be a good one, but safflower oil, again, it's difficult to get safflower oil out without some kind of high temperature processing. Another thing about canola oil, if you want to know about canola, what does canola mean? Canola oil is actually rapeseed oil. So it's can meaning Canadian, ola meaning oil. So they couldn't sell an oil called rape, so they called it canola and created an entire industry for the country of Canada. So you should be referring to canola oil by its real name, which is rapeseed oil. And that way you have an idea what it's doing to your body. Canola oil is not good for you, but a great source of olive oil. And one of the reasons why we think about canola oil and safflower oil especially badly is because of the process that's required to get that oil out and make it something palatable. So olive oil, a lot of people just like it just the way it is, right? And olive oil is something that readily comes out of olives without much in the way of processing aside from some centrifugal force. But canola oil has to be really worked out of the rapeseed to get it out of there, and so does safflower oil. So those are things like peanut oil, for instance. You know, if you get a peanut that's fresh roasted, the oil is right there, right? I mean, it's readily available to you. It doesn't require a high temperature to get oil out of a peanut. Huh, here we go again. So you have to think about this. You know, fats are fats. As far as calories are concerned, fat has per gram 9 calories per gram. So saturated fat is the same as monounsaturated fat, is the same as polyunsaturated fat as far as calories go. But especially polyunsaturated fats, especially processed polyunsaturated fats, they can't be processed by the body because they can't be broke down. They don't break down over time, and animals won't touch it because they know it ain't food. But when you have a lot of that polyunsaturated fat, you're basically taking in calories that you can't even use for fuel because your body doesn't break it down properly. And it just causes a lot of inflammation in your body. So let's look at what Craig says about monounsaturated fats. These are pretty well known and accepted nowadays to be healthy. This is on RuledMe, RULED.me. And I'm just providing commentary on Craig's input here. These are pretty well known and accepted nowadays to be healthy. There's many studies that show the health benefits linked to these, including improved insulin resistance and better HDL, LDL cholesterol levels. Olive and sunflower oil are prime examples of healthy monounsaturated fats. Now again, sunflower oil, that's something that you can get if you ever dried sunflowers and put them out there. When you pick up the sunflower kernels, they have oil that readily comes off on your hands, just like flax. Trans fats, although not included in fatty foods, only processed fatty foods, they are worth mentioning. We've all heard the story on these by now, They are created from unnatural chemical modification that allows them to have improved shelf life. The hydrogenation process is the process of adding hydrogen to these fats. That's the high temperature bombardment of hydrogen atoms that I was talking about earlier, which changes the position of the hydrogen atoms in the fatty acid chain. My advice, if it has trans fat in it, or if it has the word hydrogenated on it, don't eat it. It's linked to heart disease and will worsen your HDL, LDL cholesterol levels. That's what Craig says, and that's generally what I say too about trans fats. I think that margarine and other fake butters could easily be filled in with butter. Or if you're allergic to butter, bacon grease. Melt some bacon grease on that biscuit. I'm telling you, you won't regret it. It'll change your life. And I think that you'll have to change your life dramatically before you get to the point where you're going to put bacon grease on your bread. And by bread, I mean keto bread. Like what I make is, paleo English muffins. I'm not paleo, but, paleo English muffins. There are some paleo recipes that work pretty well with keto. And I think Jimmy Moore would agree that paleo and keto are two approaches that could very well be married somewhere in the middle. Anyway, we are coming up on the quarter till moment, and as such, I am going to give away one of these books. And I say 4 books, but one of them is the same book in a different package. So you will get your choice. Whoever says that they're interested in the next 15 minutes, or if after this broadcast ends, if no one has claimed it in the next 15 minutes, and this broadcast is then put up on replay, if for the next 24 hours from now, I will take any taker that says they're interested in the book. If you say you're interested in the book, make sure that you comment it down below in the live chat or in the comments down below, and I will give you your shot. I will pick a winner at random if it's during the live broadcast, a winner at random, or if there's no one that takes it by the end of this broadcast, I will give you 24 hours to claim one of these books. So you get Why We Get Fat by Gary Taubes. There's like a pocket edition, or the red version here that's a little larger paperback. These are for U.S. winners only, by the way. Then we have the very popular Wheat Belly by William Davis, MD, also of Undoctored fame. And the New Atkins for a New You by Dr. Eric Westman with Stephen Finney, MD, and Jeff Volek, PhD. And Eric Westman says that this book gives you everything that you need to know about getting started on a good low-carb ketogenic approach. Now, I will say that Atkins is typically thought of as a more moderate low-carb approach rather than ketogenic. Ketogenic tends to be very extremely low carb with no introduction of grain or starches or any of that business. Whereas Atkins tends to be like, we can reintroduce some of those things in moderation later on. I tend to think I don't want to eat things that I think are bad for me in moderation or at all. But if you look at this through the eyes of what you've learned from observing ketogenic science and reading the studies and stuff, then you'll have a laser focus on what to do. So you get your choice of any of these 4 books: Why We Get Fat by Gary Taubes, Wheat Belly by William Davis, and these are all in really good condition. Then you have The New Atkins for a New You by Eric Westman, Stephen Finney, and Jeff Volek. You get your choice of any of those 4. And just let me know which one that you want. You say you're interested, I will pick a winner at random by the end of this broadcast. Or if there is no response by the end of this broadcast, then I will pick one at random from the responses in the comments. So all you have to say is you're interested in the book, and then I will private message you and we will make a connection, and we'll figure out which of these books that you want. As long as you're a US resident, I will mail it directly to you free of charge, and you can enjoy the book. Now, mind you, these are all thrift store finds, so they may contain some notes or scribblings by other people because they're used, but I typically screen my books to make them, make sure they are at least very good, acceptable material for that. Anyway, we are coming up close to the end of the broadcast, and I wanted to let you guys know that we do have a Facebook group, and the Facebook group is right here at BroBryceHealth.info. You can go to that domain. It'll take you directly to the Facebook group. You can join us and join the conversation right there. And right here on BroBryceHealth.com, that's the blog site. That's where I'm going to be posting articles. This is where I'll be sharing these videos as well. They'll be coming up in the feed. And as much as I can, I'm going to try to share useful information both here on the Facebook group and BroBryceHealth.com. And I hope that you'll join us there. Also, I have my own personal Twitter that I tweet out a lot of interesting stuff. It's on BroBryce. That's just my name, at BroBryce on Twitter. Make sure you follow me there on Twitter, and I post videos from all my various channels, including this one. I also have a BroBryce Cooks channel where I share recipes that I make up and different cooking techniques and tips and stuff. And I hope that those are helpful for you. If you haven't yet, make sure that you subscribe to this channel. If you see that subscribe button somewhere on the screen, make sure you hit the bell notification on there too. That way you get notified whenever new videos get posted. And for the remainder of this bacon experiment, I'm trying to do a check-in video every 2 days or so. And that way I can keep my sanity. If I did it every day, I would pretty much lose my mind, because my job is very strenuous and I'm usually very tired when I get home. So I'm ready to eat my food and go to bed. And speaking of eating food, how you guys that are watching this now, what is your routine for how you eat your food? Do you eat your food within a certain time frame? Do you have certain foods that you eat at certain times? Now, for me, I tend to eat a completely ketogenic approach, very balanced macros, around 5% carbohydrate, around 20% protein, and around 75% fat. Now, that's considered a very balanced ketogenic approach. It's kind of dramatic for those people who aren't doing keto, but it's considered a very balanced ketogenic approach. It's pretty much par for the course. And I tend to eat just one meal. Now, that one meal may take me an hour, maybe 2 to eat, but I pretty much eat within that window. And then I'll fast for 22 to 23 hours. I don't eat anything during that window at all, typically. On certain days, I may decide to have a bulletproof coffee in the morning. I'll have some bacon fat or coconut oil with some heavy whipping cream. Sorry, I did just eat, so I'm kind of got the hiccups a little bit, and it's kind of freaking me out. But I ate 2 pounds of bacon today, and I'm going to eat 2 pounds of bacon tomorrow. And it's easier than it looks. And I may not be losing any more weight, but one other thing that I forgot to put in the check-in, and I think that maybe, there's a couple of things that I would tweak as far as the check-in stuff, the measurements and stuff that Dan Quibel gives on the bacon experiment. So on the bacon experiment, he has on one of the pages, these are the measurements that you write down. And I'm writing down progress reports on a weekly basis. But one of the things that I think that Dan could maybe include is a blood pressure check-in. It's if you are able to monitor your blood pressure, or you can go to the store and get one of those, spend a little money and get your blood pressure checked. Or if you have a blood pressure monitor like I've bought, check that. And then another measurement that I think would be interesting would be right here at the cheekbone, right? So if you were to, or at the jawbone, right? If you were to measure across here, that would be like a kind of a measurement combination, like the fat on the back of your head and your cheeks coming up to your mouth. And if you measured that each time, I think that that would be a dramatic thing, because I think a lot of people, they lose a lot of fat here and they wish they'd lose some fat down here, but they lose fat here and they're not measuring it, so they don't see it. And like my neck has lost some fat. I can see that in the mirror. I can see it right now in the camera. And I can see it on paper that I actually lost an inch off my neck, and I haven't lost an inch off my neck in forever. And my blood pressure dropped dramatically. I think that it would be great if people would check their blood pressure before and after. And what was the other thing that, because these are quantifiable results, right? It's like you can say, well, my energy level feels better, but how do you quantify that, right? You can't really quantify your energy level. You may be able to say, well, I feel like a 7 versus a 9, or I feel like a 9 versus a 3. You may be able to say that, but it's not really quantifiable on paper. So I would urge Dan to come up with some other measurements, specifically this one and the blood pressure. I think would be useful for people. Just me thinking. There was one other thing, maybe I'll think of it later on, but anyway, I want to thank all of you for joining me. We're in the last 5 minutes of the chat, and even if you're joining me after the fact, please leave your comments, your questions down below, and I would love to address them in a video coming up, or in next week's Saturday chat. You are all invited every Saturday at 4 p.m. to come join the chat. And I'm sorry that thus far nobody else has joined the chat yet, but we're going to keep doing this, and you guys can come and you can check in, do your Q&A, any questions that you have. It'd be great to open up a discussion. And I will see you again next week. So on this channel, I wanted to clarify as well that, I started my journey not being keto. When that first check-in video, when I was calling myself a fat slob, and I had people looking at some of my cooking videos, and the videos that I had, I cook with a lot of fat. I make food that's very fatty, and people were saying, a very unhealthy meal for a very unhealthy man. And it was visible that I was unhealthy. That was part of my journey. I got to where I am now, where I'm relatively healthy, especially considering where I was. I mean, those of you that knew me back then, I mean, at one time I walked with 2 canes. I had night splints on my hands and my feet, and I could barely do any kind of manual labor. Even the most menial job that they gave me to do at the post office, I was incapable of doing it because I was in so much pain. I had so much inflammation, and I didn't know what was causing it. And I sort of discovered ketogenic nutrition by accident. And I'm happy that I have people like Lynn Borzillo and Jeff Sir and Tim Rice and Sheridan Vanderham and Kathy Vermeeren that are patient with me and help me to know more, share resources with me, and we can learn together. And because of that learning, I have refined my health to where I am mostly undoctored. My next step, I think I've made a little decision, based on a couple of N=1 experiments that I've seen. And that is, I think I'm going to get a DNA test done. It's not to try to learn anything about my heritage, because I can't sit here and pretend that if I'm, 80% Scandinavian, then I'm going to start researching Scandinavian heritage and find out what I should be doing with my life because I'm Scandinavian. I'm probably not going to be doing that, but a DNA test can show you a lot of genetic traits that might be able to give you a clue as to what's wrong with you and an exact approach that you might do with your health. And if you think about how much these DNA tests cost, like from 23andme.com or from wherever, when you think about that, think about how much doctor bills cost. Even if you have insurance, I have insurance, doctor bills still cost money. Still got co-pays, and then you got your, whatever's left over after the insurance doesn't pay for this or that, you still have to pay. So there's still some money out of pocket. Let's say that you only have a $15 copay, but you got to go once a week, every week, on the clock, or on the dot, every week you got to go in for $15. And how much does that end up costing? Would it cost you the same amount of money for a few months of doctor bills versus getting your DNA test and then plugging that information into a few services and finding out what approaches you could do to actually remedy your condition? Something that your standard EKG and your blood tests don't show, your DNA test might. So that's, I think, going to be part of my journey coming up soon. And with that, we're coming up on the last minute of the show. So I'm going to leave you guys with some wonderful music from Glenn Case. As you have heard earlier on, Glenn Case is the bomb, and I'm going to play some more of it for you right now. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, and we'll see you again next time right here on the BroBryce Health channel.